In today's video, I'll be going over the action potential and its generation, how it is produced, and I'm going to show you the 4 steps to how an action potential is created. The first step in an action potential production is the resting phase. In this phase, the sodium and potassium voltage gates are both closed and the axon plasma membrane is at resting potential. Now, inside the cell, specifically in the cytosol, there is a small buildup of negative charges compared to the outside, where there is an even smaller buildup of positive charges. So inside the cell is at a more negative concentration. The second step in an action potential production is known as depolarization. Now, depolarization occurs when the membrane potential reaches a specific threshold, and this threshold is reached by the sodium channel activation gates opening and allowing the inflow of sodium ions into the cytosol, which creates a higher concentration of positive ions inside the cell as opposed to negative, as we saw in the previous resting phase, and the cell becomes depolarized. In the third step of an action potential production, we have repolarization begins. Now, in this phase, the inflow of sodium ions is halted because the sodium activation gates close. And now the potassium activation gates open, allowing potassium inside the cytosol of the cell to flow out into the extracellular fluid. And this causes the inside of the cell to restore back to a negative concentration. Now, the fourth and final step of an action potential production is repolarization continues. So in this phase, the outflow of potassium ions from the cytosol to the extracellular fluid continues. And this outflow causes the inside of the cell to become dramatically more negative, which returns the cell to resting membrane potential. And the sodium inactivation gates then open, and after that, the sodium gates close and the neuron returns to a resting phase, as we discussed in stage 1. Okay, now for a recap of what we just did. So the first phase out of the 4 steps is the resting phase. The second phase is depolarization. In the depolarization step, this is when the action potential is fired if the threshold is reached, and when the action potential is fired, there's something called an all or none principle. So when the impulse is sent along the axon, it will always stay the same speed and strength once it is released. And the third step is repolarization begins, and finally repolarization continues. And these 4 steps are what generates the action potential. Alright, that's all. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully this video was helpful for you.